The boardroom carried the scent of leather and calculated ambition, the kind of environment where fortunes shift every few months. I paused in the doorway, clutching a slim leather portfolio, observing my sister Victoria play the role she'd always preferred, the capable one. She occupied the head of a long mahogany table, presentation clicker in hand, walking Meridian Tech Solutions board through third-quarter projections. Our late father had grown this software company from a garage operation over 3 decades ago. She hadn't noticed me yet, neither had anyone else. I dressed deliberately, navy blazer, understated jewelry, hair neatly gathered, strategic invisibility. As interim CEO, Victoria announced, I've identified several areas to reduce costs. We can shut down our veteran employment initiative. It's been dragging profit margins down by 2.3% each year. She dismissed it as sentimental charity our father had insisted on. That program had connected 847 veterans with technology careers across 6 years. For my father, a Marine Corps veteran himself, it had represented everything meaningful about what he'd built. For Victoria, it represented inefficiency. Then she spotted me. Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly, jaw tightening. A micro-expression she'd been perfecting since childhood whenever someone threatened the story she was telling. "Emma, why are you here? This meeting is closed." "I'm attending," I replied simply, moving toward an empty seat. "You're not a board member. You don't even work here anymore." She turned toward Martin, our head of security stationed near the entrance. "Martin, please show my sister out. Family matters don't belong here." Martin was 53, a former Army veteran hired 8 years ago when I'd been VP of Operations. I had personally reviewed his application, overriding HR's hesitation about his employment gap following combat deployment. I'd recognized potential where others saw risk. He cleared his throat with deliberate weight. Ms. Anderson acquired 51.7% controlling interest last week through the estate settlement option. Effective Monday morning, she's the majority shareholder. He let the information settle. She's your new CEO. The room fell into the kind of silence that comes before everything rearranges itself. Victoria's color drained. That's impossible. The shares were split evenly. I received 50%. She received 50%. "Not exactly," I said, settling into the chair directly across from her. The leather portfolio landed softly on the table. Dad's will divided his 70% stake between us equally, 35% apiece, but Mom held her own 30% separately. You forgot about Mom's shares. I'd learned about ownership structures through difficult experience. Following Dad's funeral 8 months earlier, Victoria had immediately installed herself as interim CEO, telling everyone I was too emotional to handle corporate responsibilities. She told the board I needed time to process my grief. She told our mother I was having a breakdown and shouldn't be included in company discussions. What Victoria hadn't anticipated was how I'd actually been spending those 8 months. I'd been doing excavation work, uncovering manipulation patterns that stretched back decades. Mom sold me her 30% stake for exactly what she'd originally paid in 1998, $180,000. Not because I'd requested it, but because she'd watched Victoria operate for 8 months and recognized something cold and calculating in her daughter's eyes, the same quality she'd witnessed in her own mother, who had stolen her inheritance back in 1973. The transfer was entirely legal, I continued. Mom's attorney, Judge Morrison, the retired family court judge who handled Dad's estate, verified every detail. The CC notification was filed last Monday. I hold 51.7%, you hold 35%, and the remaining 13.3% belongs to employee stock options. Victoria's hands trembled against the table's edge. You went around me. I used proper legal channels, unlike what you've been doing. I opened the portfolio. What followed was a summary of every financial decision she'd made as interim CEO across 8 months of what she'd been calling modernization. I drew out the first document. Each page was its own quiet detonation. June 15th, she eliminated the Veteran Hiring Initiative. Annual savings $340,000. She also eliminated the program coordinator position, terminating Sarah Vance, a Marine Corps veteran decorated with 3 Purple Hearts who had placed 127 veterans in jobs. Board member Patricia Chen, who oversaw HR, shifted in her seat. She hadn't known Sarah's background. Victoria had described it to her as a redundant role. July 3rd, she sold the company's community training center for $1.8 million to a real estate developer. That center had provided free coding instruction to underserved communities since 2016, training 2,430 people over 7 years, 64% of whom the company had subsequently hired. I pushed the receipts toward the board. The buyer was Pinnacle Development, LLC, a Delaware company registered just 3 months before the transaction. Sole proprietor, Victoria Anderson. She had sold company property to herself at 40% below its appraised value. An independent assessment had valued the building at $3.1 million. The temperature in the room seemed to shift. Board member Richard Torres, our CFO, drew the documents closer, his expression hardening as he reviewed the figures. August 10th, she increased her own compensation from $180,000 to $420,000, calling it a market rate adjustment for the CEO title. Actual market compensation for a CEO at our company scale, $280,000. She had given herself a 133% raise while dismantling veteran programs. Victoria pushed back her chair abruptly, the legs scraping against the floor. I was managing this company while I was what? I kept my voice even. Grieving? I was documenting. Dad taught me that. He used to say, in business, paper beats conversation every time. The sunk cost fallacy describes the tendency to keep investing in something because of what's already been put in. Regardless of mounting evidence, it won't pay off. Our family had been feeding the machine of Victoria's perceived competence for 38 years, convinced that her potential would eventually deliver. But some machines are built to take and never return. What psychologists call narcissistic triangulation is the practice of positioning oneself as the central authority while carefully isolating others from each other. Victoria had executed it with precision. She told the board I was unreachable. She told our mother I was unstable. She told our younger brother Daniel I was being difficult. Each relationship had been quietly poisoned so that no one would think to compare notes. Until Mom called Daniel in September, Daniel called me, and the 3 of us gathered in Mom's kitchen on a Thursday afternoon and began assembling the pieces of what Victoria had constructed. She told me you didn't want to be involved, Mom said quietly, that the company reminded you too much of your father. She told me you were having panic attacks, Daniel added, that bringing up business would set you off. I showed them the messages I'd sent Victoria. 47 texts across 6 months asking about board meetings, financial moves, strategic direction. Her responses ranged from, I'll handle it, to not a good time, to nothing at all. Family isn't defined by shared blood, Mom had said eventually. It's defined by who shows up when blood isn't enough. That was when she offered me her shares. Now, back in the boardroom, I continued through the portfolio's contents. Each page dismantled another piece of Victoria's version of events. September 22nd, she had attempted to sell Meridian's proprietary software licensing to Cortex Systems for $4.2 million. Market analysis placed the licensing value at $11.8 million. She was offloading company assets to a competitor at a dramatic loss. I produced another document. Cortex VP of Acquisitions was James Morrison, her fiancé. The email thread discussing the deal included his message. Once the sale closes, we can finally start the villa renovation. Patricia actually gasped audibly. Richard's face had gone crimson. October 5th, she terminated Michael Torres, our lead developer, citing performance concerns. Michael held a 98% code efficiency rating and had built 3 of the company's flagship features. I slid the termination paperwork across the table. He had also been questioning the Cortex transaction. His termination documents included a forced non-disclosure agreement carrying a $500,000 penalty for any criticism of company decisions. Judge Morrison had reviewed that agreement, deemed it an unconscionable restraint on speech, and advised Michael he had grounds to challenge it. He was now working with an employment attorney. "You've been systematically dismantling everything Dad built," I said. "Not to improve the company, to strip it." Victoria's voice cracked. "You have no idea what it actually takes to lead. You were always Dad's favorite. I was VP of operations for 6 years. I built the entire project management infrastructure. I negotiated our 3 largest contracts. I created the veteran program you called charity." I leaned forward. "And yes, Dad and I were close because we held the same values. We believed profit and purpose weren't in conflict." There's a kind of invisible accounting that happens in families alongside the financial kind. I'd been assembling it for months, calculating the costs that never appear on any balance sheet. Thanksgiving 2018, Victoria announced her engagement. I'd been promoted to VP that same week. My news received 3 minutes. Her wedding planning consumed 3 hours of conversation. Cost, professional recognition, unrecoverable. During Dad's cancer battle in 2023, I had taken family medical leave to help coordinate appointments, research treatments, and manage daily care. Victoria visited twice in 6 months, both times to discuss upcoming business decisions. Cost, the shared weight of a parent's illness, carried alone. At the funeral, I delivered 847 words about Dad's values, his commitment to veterans, his belief in second chances. Victoria spoke for 4 minutes about carrying forward his business success. She did not mention a single person he had helped. Cost, an honest memorial of who he actually was, irreplaceable. Every family dinner where Victoria established herself as the successful one, the serious one, the daughter who truly understood business, while I was labeled too sensitive, too emotional, too soft for real strategy. Cost, self-belief, worn down across decades. Genuine accountability isn't built from anger, it's built from patience translated into documented evidence. "I'm calling for an emergency vote," I said, "to remove Victoria as interim CEO and appoint permanent leadership. I'm also requesting an immediate forensic audit of all transactions during her 8-month tenure." Richard moved his laptop closer. "I'll second the motion. As majority shareholder, I'm authorizing the audit regardless of how the vote goes," I added, "but I want board consensus." The vote came back unanimous, 8-0. Victoria abstained, her expression one of stunned disbelief. "I'm also reinstating the Veteran Employment Initiative effective immediately. Sarah Vance will be contacted about returning as coordinator with a formal apology and back pay for wrongful termination. Michael Torres will receive his position back under equivalent terms." Patricia was already writing. The training center sale was being challenged. The $1.8 million would be returned along with penalties for self-dealing. If Pinnacle Development LLC contested the reversal, we would pursue civil fraud charges. "You're destroying me," Victoria whispered. "I'm repairing what you destroyed," I said. "Those aren't the same thing." What followed unfolded with methodical precision over the coming weeks. In the first week, forensic accountants from Brennan and Associates arrived and examined every transaction Victoria had approved. Their report spanned 180 pages. The summary: $6.7 million in questionable decisions, including undervalued asset sales, inflated consulting fees routed to companies her associates owned, and strategic dismantling that would have left Meridian insolvent within 3 years. In the second week, the board voted to pursue legal remedies. Victoria was formally removed from all positions. Her remaining 35% stake was placed in a trust she could neither access nor sell without board approval, a legal structure our father had actually included in the company's founding documents. None of us had understood why until now. He had seen something in Victoria that those of us closest to her had been too near to recognize. By the third week, the SEC had opened an investigation into the self-dealing. Victoria's attorney negotiated a settlement. She surrendered 20% of her shares back to the company, paid $2.4 million in restitution, and accepted a permanent ban from serving as an officer in any publicly traded organization. In the fourth week, Sarah Vance returned as veteran hiring coordinator. Her first act was to establish a memorial scholarship in Dad's name, $50,000 annually for veterans pursuing careers in technology. I approved it without hesitation. By the second month, Michael Torres had successfully challenged the NDA. It was voided entirely. He returned as lead developer with a 30% salary increase and a new title, Chief Technology Officer. By the third month, the training center sale had been reversed. Pinnacle Development LLC was dissolved. The building reopened with expanded programming, now including free childcare so parents could attend evening sessions. By the fourth month, Meridian's quarterly earnings showed 23% growth. We had hired 47 veterans. Efficiency was up, morale had recovered, the company my father built was breathing again. 6 months after the board meeting, I stood in the main hall of the training center watching graduation ceremonies for 32 students who had completed our coding program. 19 were veterans, 13 were single parents from low-income communities. All 32 had received job offers, 8 from Meridian, 24 from partner organizations. Sarah stood beside me. "Your father would be so proud." "He'd be proud of the work you're doing," I said. Martin approached in his crisp security uniform. "Miss Anderson, there's someone at the front entrance asking for you." Victoria. I hadn't spoken to my sister since the board meeting. Her messages had come in waves, furious at first, then desperate, then silence. Our mother had offered to broker a conversation. I had declined. That account was closed. "Tell her I'm unavailable. She says she wants to apologize." I considered this. The outcome I had planned hadn't included any path back to her. But I also remembered something my father had once said. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, but a door can stay unlocked without being open. "Tell her I'll meet with her," I said at last, "in 3 months. After she finishes the financial ethics course the SEC required, after she demonstrates genuine change through behavior rather than words." I paused. "And only after she completes 20 volunteer hours at the Veteran Services Center. Not for my sake, for hers." Martin nodded and walked away. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That's generous." "It's conditional," I corrected. "If she wants to rebuild herself, she can do it through action. Whether she actually will, and that's yet to be seen. There's no room in my life for who she was, but people can reconstruct themselves if they choose the work." Dad believed that. It's exactly why he gave veterans second chances. The accounting was settled, the company was stable, the mission had been restored. And I was finally leading the organization my father had always envisioned, one where profit and purpose shared the same foundation.